Hi, I'm Jack, and this was my third session of day 4 of South by Southwest. It was tech powering the global energy transition, and they had speakers from Synergy Plasmonics, Chemvita Factory Inc., Moonflower Technologies, and then the president of the Houston Energy Transition Initiative. They're all Houston-based companies, and they're all sustainable energy technology companies. Trevor Best was in Syzygy, I think, Plasmonics. Moji Karamini was in Chemvita Factory Inc. Federico Marquez was CEO of Moonflower Technologies, and I'm pretty sure all of them were CEOs as well. And it was very, very cool to hear them talk. It was actually probably one of my favorite talks at South by Southwest. So one of the main things Trevor talked about was his company's kind of efforts to turn CO2 into something that microbes can consume, not turn it into, but engineer microbes through synthetic biology to actually consume CO2 out of the air instead of sugar. So he didn't go into detail on that, but it was extremely interesting to hear that, and sounds very promising. The synthetic biology is being used very commonly in this industry, and Houston is kind of one of the leaders in this energy transition and energy transition capital. They have a lot of manufacturing, some of the best talent there, and they're really leading the charge because they are one of the biggest energy producers and historically have been. They're also becoming one of the biggest alternative energy solution hubs and ecosystems for pretty much all of America. So that was really cool to hear. I didn't know much of that. Another thing that they do is the microbes can create ethanol and like alcohol and polyethylene, no, ethyl something, but it's used in plastics, and they can basically recreate plastics from CO2 from the air, which is just unbelievable. Basically, so he showcased his reactor. I think it was a photobioreactor, and he kind of explained how there's LED lights all on it and everything. It's pretty complicated, but it's one of their newest prototypes that they're going to release in the next year, and it's a huge thing because it pretty much does better in terms of carbon emissions than almost any other type of renewable energy, wind, solar, any of the others, and it's super interesting. They're trying to get it bigger in size, but also make more of it. So that's their next challenge right now. But it basically has zero added emissions and eliminates emissions. So one of I think it was Moji was talking about how his sister was really interested in photosynthesis and just how organisms are able to take CO2 out of the air and convert it to oxygen. And she thought it was about time for humans to be able to figure out how to do that as well with our technology. So that's sort of what inspired him and her as well. He talked about some really cool things like turning CO2 into sugar for astronauts in space from the air that they breathe. And he said like 96% of Mars is CO2. So when they plan on going to Mars at some point, they will be able to convert that CO2 into methane and possibly use it for fuel. It's still in the works, but that was super cool to hear as well. And synthetic biology is really changing the game in terms of energy sustainability and a number of other fields as well, including health and med tech. But they also said design was probably the biggest thing in terms of output. So just sculpting it over and over again, tons of aha moments. And other things were mentioned, like space age tech, which is basically this, these astronauts having their breath converted into sugar. But I won't go too much more into detail, but there are a bunch of CO2 added value products that can be created from carbon capture from these organisms, and some of those are, but not limited to, synthetic fuel, methanol. That's what it was, methanol. Other products, fertilizer, polyethylene for plastics, and basically the goal is to create a sustainable carbon life cycle and not adding more carbon to create more carbon, trying to have it less than what we have now. He also went into kind of how much actual emissions that solar creates compared to wind. And wind is actually probably our best form of lowest form of emissions, carbon emission, renewable energy. So that was cool to hear as well. And carbon capture is going to be a huge thing. I think one of the things that his reactor uses within the process is ammonia, and that has an interaction with a couple others, methane, I believe, as well. And they basically do it in a way where there's very little to no waste products, and it's renewable and it gets back into the cycle. So that's really cool. Like I said, solar has a 5-time carbon intensity of wind, so that's pretty interesting. But yeah, so really cool stuff, and I'm really excited to hear more about this company and follow these companies on their journey.